I mean, is Biden, I'm not quite sure where it goes. A lot of people do believe Sanders' proposal, for example, on financial transactions would be ruinous.
Well, you know, it's dizzying. Suddenly, all these new tax ideas are flying around for new taxes. Well, how about the old taxes? Why don't we do something about that? We have a horribly inefficient, ineffective, in many cases unfair tax code where we could generate a lot of additional tax revenue simply by making it more fair. But let's put that aside for a moment. The financial transaction tax, the minute you start taxing any particular activity, you're going to have less of it. So I think we should just acknowledge right away that you start slapping taxes on financial transactions, people are not going to enter into the transactions as much, which means the markets will not be as liquid, they will not be as transparent, they will not reflect real-world conditions as quickly and efficiently as they do now. And that's a very, very significant price to pay. The thing that bothers me about the wealth tax, you know, I guess we can all agree that there are these very high concentrations of wealth in a few people, and we think that's a problem. But why is that? Well, one of the reasons that we have some of these billionaires is that they never paid any tax. I mean, we can look at the President of the United States as Exhibit A. They are making a lot of money, and they are taking advantage of all the loopholes in the current tax code to accumulate this wealth. Now, there are other people, and I think I would include Bloomberg in this group. He founded a company. He contributed something of great value. I've never heard anyone accuse him of acting in any unfair way to accumulate this wealth. But instead of addressing the source of the problem, we're just saying, okay, we're going to take a sledgehammer and we're going to hit all of you rich people and start taking that wealth away from you. By the way, wealth that fairly or unfairly you've already paid taxes on. I think it raises a host of simple problems of fairness, of efficiency, of practicality, when what we really need to do is address the major inequities and inefficiencies in the current tax code.
I mean, taxes are used to modify behavior, as you've said. It's also to raise revenue. And your point is They're just going where the money is and not thinking about the behavior.
Yeah, I mean, definitely one of the reasons these taxes on the ultra-wealthy are so popular is that the people who say they like it assume they are not going to be paying it. Taxes are always popular when someone else has to pay it. And so to get it to be really popular, you have to narrow it to such a small group that it doesn't really start raising that much money. If you actually would go into the current tax code and address major loopholes, and I think the idea of raising capital gains taxes or even making them at parity with regular income taxes is something that ought to be discussed, ought to be on the table. That raises a lot of revenue.
And estate tax too?
Exactly, the estate tax too. If you start, really significantly applying that equitably and fairly across the board, you're going to raise a lot of money on that.
Biden telling John Harwood that he is anticipating inheriting a recession, if his party comes to power in 2020. So how do you kind of square that with this whole idea of raising taxes? He also said he wasn't interested in balancing the budget. I mean, it seems like there are a lot of different levers at play here that could be problematic if they're not kind of thinking about it in the whole picture.
That's absolutely right. I mean, there are these contradictory impulses. I mean, you're absolutely right that if indeed we have a recession on the horizon, and I don't actually see it, but someday it is going to come. We know that from history. You don't want to be raising taxes. Certainly you don't want to be raising them in the trillions of dollars that we're talking about to pay for this. And then, another problem with that whole wealth tax idea where people think, oh, it's not going to apply to me. The history of taxes is it starts applying to the ultra wealthy. You realize it's not raising all that much money, so the threshold starts coming down. Elizabeth Warren has already lowered it dramatically. I've seen,
she raised the billionaires to 6%, and now it goes down to 50 million, I think, whereas it's 2% above 50, right?
Right. So now we're at
billion
50.
At 6%.
Pretty soon we're at 10, and we're at 5. And there are a lot of people, you can call them rich if you want, but in high real estate cost of living cities who live in houses, apartments, whatever, that they didn't really pay all that much money for, but they're now sitting on an asset that could be worth millions of dollars. It may be their primary asset. They're older, they don't have a lot of income. What are they supposed to do? Like sell their house so they can start paying the wealth tax? They're going to have to do a lot of, carve-outs here and special things. I mean, I shudder to think at how many hundreds of pages wealth tax legislation would actually look like. And the minute you start carving something out, we're back in the loophole category. And the history of wealth taxes is people avoid them.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, Larry Summers has been on a bit of a sermon about collecting taxes that are owed but not paid, right? Filling that tax gap. Why is that not getting as much attention?
I guess you can't chant about that at a rally or something like that. Is it the whole thing about kind of trying to make the system we have work doesn't seem to excite people. Maybe that just doesn't sound revolutionary, that there's a mood out there that we want something radical, we want something new, we want something dramatic. Right. So that's appealing to political candidates, but I agree. There's what we need is somebody who really understands the way taxes work, and can get some experts in there. And there have been lots of studies. There were lots of good proposals. There are the Brookings Institution. All these think tanks have spent years studying taxes, and they have lots of good ideas that do not involve a wealth tax or a financial.
But all that said, Jim, the accretion of wealth through a small group has been extraordinary. I mean, I follow it with the proliferation of family offices. Today, the Journal reporting on Michael Dell. Incredible entrepreneur, great job creator, amazing. $400 million he put into his family office with two guys who are really smart. It's $16 billion now. That's outside of his holdings of Dell. And that's just one example. I mean, these family offices are enormous. And people may not realize just with the pools of capital.
Yeah, no, they are huge. But again, I know that polls show that most people feel that the ultra-rich have gotten that way unfairly. And, well, maybe some of them have gotten there unfairly. But have all of them? Are we going to start trying to cherry pick like who did? I mean, if the Dell family office, multiplied that fortion,
there's nothing wrong with having done it at all.
I mean, that's contributing in its own way to the economy as well. Because they've succeeded, are we going to simply take that away from them? And then another irony of the wealth tax is people who do not invest it, who do not save it, who consume it, who fritter it away, whatever, they don't pay the tax. They just spend it. And is that the kind of behavior we want to encourage? I don't think so.